Good evening, fellow students. My name is Mahmoud Musa, also known as Bizimo. So I am here today to enlighten you guys about some courses in mass communication and also in some area of discipline like literature, government, and politics. But here today we're going to discuss about a discipline known as mass communication. In some other school they do feel it like media study, but generally it is called mass communication. So one of the preliminary of the course is Mark 101, which is Introduction to Communication. In some other school they do call it Introduction to Mass Communication. Well, let us talk about the course outline of this course. The first one is meaning of communication. We have types of communication, we have forms of communication, and we also have models of communication. So firstly, we're going to discuss about what is communication. As we all know that generally communication can be defined as a process whereby a sender sends a message to the receiver, also known as the recipient. Can also call the sender as a kind of encoder who encodes the information from his ends towards to the receiver. So now for us to break all these things down, let us start from the meaning of that communication. The etymologically of this communication can be derived from the word of communicare, which means to impart information to one another. So that is the etymological meaning of communication. So you can define communication in a layman understanding anyhow you want to define it. Actually, if you look at the Oxford Dictionary, communication can be defined as the process whereby some people or an individual or an organization send a message to a large audience. So that's what we mean by that communication. So now for us to get the complex meaning of this communication, let's talk about the types of communication. So majorly we have two types of communication. We have verbal and non-verbal communication. So now what is verbal communication? Verbal communication can be defined as a kind of communication whereby you make use of your mouth without using any form of non-verbal communication. So that's what we mean by that verbal communication. And also, if you want to understand this verbal communication better, you come to understand what are the elements, what are the tenets in this verbal communication. We have what we consider as spoken communication, and we have what we consider as written communication. So what is spoken communication? Spoken communication is the process whereby you use your mouth to transmit some message to the people. It will be your friends, your pals, your teachers. So that is what I mean by that spoken communication. And spoken communication does not deal with you using your hands, miming, or using any kind of gestures, communications to communicate with one another by using your spoken words. What we mean by the words. So that is what we mean by that spoken communication. So now, what we mean by this written communication, as we all know that written communication actually deal with written methods by using newspaper, pamphlets, or any kind of a news outlet that actually deal with written. So that is what we mean by that written communication under verbal communication. Don't forget, the word verbal communication means communicating verbally from one another using spoken words or written words. And spoken communication does not deal with you using your hands, miming, or using any kind of gestures, communications to communicate with one another by using your spoken words. What we mean by the words. So that is what we mean by that spoken communication. So now, what we mean by this written communication, as we all know that written communication actually deal with written methods by using newspaper, pamphlets, or any kind of a news outlet that actually deal with written. So that is what we mean by that written communication under verbal communication. Don't forget, the word verbal communication means communicating verbally from one another using spoken words or written words. So one of the advantages of spoken communication, or one of the advantages of verbal communication, is that it actually deals with a kind of a two-way communication whereby the person you are communicating is in the front of you, like you are communicating with the person by you getting a kind of a response, by like a kind of a quick feedback. So that's one of the major advantages of verbal communication. So what you mean by that? What you mean by this non-verbal communication? It's just the direct opposite of verbal communication. Non-verbal communication actually deal with you not using your spoken words or any kind of a written method. Non-verbal communication deal with you using your gestures, you using your kinetics or chronemics. What by that gesture actually deal with your affirmation. Like somebody asks you some questions like this now. Okay, will you like to go with me to my friend party? Now be like, you now nod your head like this. It's actually deal with non-verbal communication that you are not using your kind of a word or spoken words. That's mine. So that is what we mean by that non-verbal communication. So those are the two types of communication that we have. Now let us move on to forms of communication. So For us to understand these forms of communication better, or we come to understand some forms like informal communication, we have formal communication, we also have what we consider as mass communication, group communication, and human communication.